So what got you to think that this was going to be the best journey for you to take with the bench press?
Well, that's easy. So a lot of my decisions and a lot of my beliefs about life are based in biology. So I got, science and biology and how the body works and physiology. And here's the thing that happens. When you put down muscle, you make new contractile elements out of proteins. They're structural in nature. They're part of your body. Whereas cardiovascular fitness is more enzymatic, and you make enzymes every day and then they get burned up and you got to make more. And so high cardiovascular fitness comes from an oversupply of the enzymes that do the Krebs cycle and release energy from fatty acid metabolism. But the contractile elements for strength, when you lose weight and you're burning fat, you don't lose. They don't tear down. They don't just disappear because they're structural. They're made and they're there and they stay there. And when you lose the fat, you're burning energy. They stay there. So as you said, there's no law. Not only is there not any law, when you burn all that fat off, you still have the muscle you made. Now it's not fully supplied with energy. So when you crash diet, you lose some top end strength because there's not as much glycogen, not as much fluid.
Leverage.
But that turns around in the first week.
Mm-hmm.
When you start force feeding again, you have almost all of the strength that you got up to when you put the tissue on, because you put on muscle and you put on fat, and then you just lost fat. And all those contractile elements are still there that you can use for strength. And then you can put more on. So every time I went up, I put on muscle and fat. Every time I came down, I basically lost just fat. So every time I started over again from 220, I started with more muscle and more muscle and more muscle every time, and more strength. So it was about, how do I gain strength, not necessarily muscle, because the bigger the muscle is, probably the stronger it will be.
Well, it's also going to make it harder for you to get to that bottom class.
It does. I got leaner and leaner.
Yes.
Yeah. The last couple of times were tough. About the first year, I got down to 198 a couple of times.
Yeah.
Huh?
That becomes that problem when you put on 10 extra more pounds of muscle the next time you go down through.
Yeah. And that was the idea behind why I stopped training legs. I had to keep getting down to 220. And I'm like, why am I training my legs so hard? I don't really use those to bench, so I don't really need them to be so strong. Why am I training them? And that's when I tried to do some overtraining with them to kind of burn them down on the bike and cardio. And that was fairly successful. I got rid of some, but it was harder every time to come down, that's for sure. But it was easier to get up. And every time I came up, I superseded the strength level I was at each weight class, each 10 pounds. I was stronger than I was last time I was here. There's a physiological basis in biology. When you don't tear down the structure of your body, it's still there for using when you feed it and hydrate it back, and re-establish that high level of skill. But that's not hard. Week, 2 weeks, you're right back. And people call it like muscle memory, or I don't know, they have names for it, but everybody knows. I call it re-achieving where you've been. But everybody knows it's not hard to come back from and do something you've already done. It's hard to go into a new place and do something you've never done, and that's hard. But it's easy to get back to where you were after a diet. Very easy. So that was the general principle of it. But that's bodybuilding too. Those 60s bodybuilders out at Venice Beach, they bulk and cut. And they did it seasonally, usually, but they did the same thing. Bulk up, cut up, bulk up, cut up. Every time. Growing.
So with that, because these were, you were in Westside when you were kind of doing a lot of this stuff. They were long. We're talking a year period of time for the people that don't understand the duration of what we're talking. Now, some of the drops are faster than that. So,
I did
some
them
were
as fast
pretty
as possible.
freaking radical.
Yeah, did them as fast as possible.
Yes.
But usually certainly one a year, sometimes twice a year.
That's what I'm saying, that full turnaround, getting back, down and up, because the drop was fast. Like you would get up.
Right, because I want to get strong
and
again.
Then, yes, it dropped down fast, then it came back up.
Yeah.
Where there's, even with that 6-month period of time, it's was there a big part of you that, as you just said, you wanted to get back up? Because that's the funnest
I wanted to get
one.
strong, yeah.
The strong one.
There's suffering when you're dieting.
Yeah, and well, there's patience too. Because you got 6 months here.
I was fairly impatient.
Yeah, well, you have to be though. So how did you work with that? So let's say you're at the top 308 and it's a 605, just whatever it was. You really want that 620, whatever it's going to be. But you're going to have to go all the way down
and come back
all the way up, and that could be 6 months. Whatever it's going to be. You got to. Meanwhile, you really want that 620.
Right.
So where's that patience come from?
I think I was able to placate the impatience a little bit, because as I went back up each weight class, I was setting records, personal records for where I was. So I didn't have to wait to get all the way up to get a record. So I had a record at 308, 275, 242, 220. And then each time I got to a new class, I was able to try for a record for me in that class. And sometimes a world record or a state record, sometimes the record, but certainly my record. And every time I came back up, I never skipped back up classes without having something to show for it. It's not like I had to wait all the way till I got back to the top to do something with it. I was doing something all the way, every step of the way. So it wasn't as long. I didn't need as much patience maybe as it might seem. So I didn't have to wait till I get all the way here and then go for the big 620, right? I was getting something. I was getting a little bit of reward each step of the way.
With the world records today, because you kind of talked about that a little bit just here. I mean, actually, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I'll be the first to admit that, because a lot of the things I see people having issues with the sport today, I'm like, oh, yeah, so did we. It's the same. It's the same thing. Where now, instead of Powerlifting USA and the top 100, there's open powerlifting. It's just an open database where the numbers just get thrown in there. If it's an all-time world record, it can be set in your garage. It can be set anywhere. It doesn't have to be set at a national meet or a world meet. So this is creating questions with, now if it's a world record, or a national record, yes, that needs to be set in that nationals or world of whatever federation.
Okay.
But all time, doesn't matter. Now,
that's diluted.
Then it gets thrown into the, basically the open powerlifting or the top 100. This is creating a little bit of a mental dilemma for those that are training for all-time world records, who would say that they're legit, their lifts are more legit than the ones being passed elsewhere. So they're in this weird place now to where they're asking themselves, am I doing this really for myself, or am I doing this to be because when you're at that level where you're talking all-time best, there's a whole nother reward. It's a pretty
rare group of people.
It's a very rare group.
One people.
One. Well,
one people.
It can be one rewarded in a backyard garage, with.
Yeah, but can it?
Yeah, whatever it's going to be.
So I would ask a person that does that if they lived up to their own standard. Did they live up to their own expectations? And if they did, then I'll have to accept it, because that's fair. If you do what you wanted to do, when that happens, I don't think you get the same kind of justification to talk to others about it. You can compare yourself to you. Yeah, I did what I wanted to do, and it was an all-time record in my backyard. Nobody even saw it, but I did it. All right, well, I'm dubious, so don't expect me to give you the same kind of accolade then that I would have if you did it at the Worlds or the Nationals. I remember when they changed that rule. That happened in my time. You couldn't set a world record at any meet. You had to set it with certain number of national or world judges on the platform judging you at that time.
That's because it did what's happening now.
Yeah.
So they had to reel it back in.
Yeah. But if somebody satisfies themselves in an endeavor, who am I to say you're not satisfied? Oh, yes,
Well,
I
it's
am.
the person.
Oh, yes, I am
Let's say it's the
satisfied.
person that gets beat, right? Because the sacrifice is a weird word, so I do want to talk about that too. But for now, the context, let's just say the sacrifice is that person's own personal sacrifice, that they're sacrificing, for that all-time world record at a certain standard,
Yeah.
and then
But that's their expectation.
yes.
So I don't know that that person would even be threatened by the other one, because that's not their expectation.
Or
My
they shouldn't
expectation.
be.
Well, no, it won't be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. Let's
I get
say
where
that.
you're going.
Let's say,
going. Yeah.
If their expectation is, I want to do this, and I want to do it so I get the respect of my peers. I don't want to just do it. I want the respect of these people that I want them to be at their best. I want them to do their best, and then I want to beat them. And I want their respect after I do that. It's not going to mean anything to me if I do it and they don't respect me. Not to me, because that's my expectation. But not everybody has that expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just want to talk and say this and say that. And I dismiss those people. I would not, if I was in that situation, that's a hypothetical where I'm trying for an all-time world record. And some guy gets this dubious one.
Mm-hmm.
And now I got to find 20 more pounds somewhere. But I'm doing mine in a metered, judged, official federation. I'm not even going to worry about that dude. I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's not in my group of expectation. My expectation is to do it right.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Is to
now.
do it
Yeah.
is to do it the way the established route, not
Yes.
just to do it and say I did it. We had those guys. We had guys that saying they did it. But this is a different day and age with everybody posting all their lifts and training and everything on the line.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost as if I taught for a while at high school, and so I was amazed that these kids, their online persona was more important to them than their real persona. And they were lying about stuff online. You and I could say whatever we want because we started out without the internet. But these kids did not. And their life has had something to do with that plugged in, on display world that we probably can't understand how important that is to them. I know that I can't. I don't understand it. But they go to such great lengths to facilitate that online persona. And they change pictures and they filter pictures and they this and they that and they say they did this and then fake weights and then this and that. So it's a different situation now when you go out of that growing up where things are kind of fake. And that's just the way it is. Some people fake things. Most of us fake a little bit. And then you get into a competitive situation where you want to try to do something that nobody's ever done before and you want people to believe you. And you can't. I don't think you can revert back to I did it in my backyard.
Mm-hmm.
I think you need some people to stand behind that as a vetting that you did it.